Our changing Earth. The lithosphere is broken into a number of plates, known as lithospheric plates. You will be surprised to know that these plates move around very slowly, just a few millimeters each year. This is because the movement of the molten magma inside the Earth. The molten magma inside the Earth moves in a circular manner as shown in this activity. The movement of these plates cause changes on the surface of the Earth. The Earth movements are divided on the basis of the forces which cause them. The forces which act in the interior of the Earth are called endogenic forces, and the forces that work on the surface of Earth are called exogenic forces. Earth movements. Endogenic forces, exogenic forces. In endogenic forces, we have two types of forces: sudden forces, diastrophic forces. Sudden forces we have earthquake, volcano, landslides. Diastrophic forces we have building mountains. Exogenic forces we have erosional and decompositional, river, wind, sea waves, glaciers. Endogenic forces sometimes produce sudden movements and other times produce slow movements. Sudden movements like earthquake and volcanoes cause mass destruction over the surface of the earth. A volcano is a vent or opening in the earth crust through which molten material erupts suddenly. Similarly, when lithospheric plates moves, the surface of earth vibrates. The vibrations can travel all around the earth. These vibrations are called earthquakes. The place in the crust where the movement starts is called the focus. The place on the surface above the focus is called epicenter. Vibrations travel outward from the epicenter as waves. Greatest damage is usually closest to the epicenter, and the strength of the earthquake decreases away from the center. Although earthquakes cannot be predicted, the impact can certainly be minimized if we are prepared beforehand. Some common earthquake prediction methods adopted locally by people include studying animal behavior. Fish in ponds get agitated. Snakes come to the surface. Earthquake, a case study. Earthquake hits Bhuj. A massive earthquake measuring 6.9 on Richter scale hit Bhuj town on 26 January 2001. School worst affected. At least 971 students and 31 teachers are feared to have lost their lives following the collapse of a school building. Bhuj relief effort belighted. 3 days after the quake, concern rose about food, blankets, and medical supplies not reaching everyone. Destruction of Bhuj, phone lines, water pipelines, and power stations transmission line were knocked out. Fire in the city. Hundreds of fires started as charcoal cookers overturned. Emergency declared in quake zone. The president declares a state of emergency. CM's appeal to the center. Gujarat appeals for financial help. The Chief Minister of Gujarat has launched an appeal for the center to deal with the disaster. Earthquake preparedness. Way to take shelter during an earthquake. Safe spot. Under a kitchen counter, table or desk. Against an inside corner or wall. Stay away from fireplaces, areas around chimneys, windows that are shattered including mirror and picture frames. Be prepared. Spread awareness amongst your friends and family members and face any disaster confidently. Major landforms. The landscape is being continuously worn away by two processes, weathering and erosion. Weathering is the breaking up of rocks on the Earth's surface. Erosion is the wearing away of the landscape by different agents like water, wind, and ice. The eroded material is carried away or transported by water, wind, etc., and eventually deposited. This process of erosion and deposition creates different landforms on the surface of the earth. Work of a river. The running water in the river erodes the landscape. When the river tumbles at steep angle over very hard rocks or down a steep valley side, it forms a waterfall. Hard rock. Softer rock undercut by power of the water. As the river enters the plain, it twists and turns, forming large bands also known as meanders. Due to continuous erosion and deposition among the sides of meander, the ends of meander loop comes closer and closer. In due to course of time, the meander loop cut from the river and forms a cut-off lake, also called as an oxbow lake. At times, the river overflows its banks. This leads to flooding of neighboring areas. As it floods, it deposits layers of fine soil and other material called sediments along its banks. This leads to formation of flat fertile food plain. The raised banks are called levees. As the river approaches sea, the speed of the flowing water decreases and the river begins to break up into number of streams called distributaries. The river becomes so slow that it begins to deposit its load. Each distributary forms its own mouth. The collection of sediments from all the mouths form a delta. Work of sea waves. The erosion and deposition of sea waves give rise to coastal landforms. Sea waves continuously strike at rocks. Cracks develop. Over time, they become larger and wider. Thus, hollow-like caves are formed on the rocks. They are called sea caves. As these cavities become bigger and bigger, only the roof of the caves remain, thus forming sea arches. Further erosion breaks the roof and only walls are left. These walls-like features are called stacks. The steep rocky coast rising almost vertically above the sea water is called sea cliff. These sea waves deposit sediments along the shores, forming beaches. Work of ice. Glaciers are rivers of ice which too erode the landscape by bulldozing soil and stones to expose the solid rock below. Glaciers carve out the deep hollows. As the ice melts, they get filled up with water and become beautiful lakes in the mountains. The material carried by the glacier, such as rocks, big and small, sand and silt, gets deposited. These deposits from glacial moraines. Work of wind. Have you ever visited a desert? Try to collect some pictures of sand dunes. An active agent of erosion and deposition in desert. In the wind in desert, you can see rocks in the shape of a mushroom, commonly called mushroom rocks. Winds erode the lower section of the rock more than the upper part. Therefore, such rocks have narrower base and wider top. While the wind blows, it lifts and transports sand from one place to another. When it stops blowing, the sand falls and gets deposited into lower hill-like structures. These are called sand dunes. When the grain of sands are very fine and light, the wind carries it over very long distances. When such sand is deposited in large areas, it is called loess. Large deposits of loess is found in China.